Alright, here we are at the next part of Let's Read of Flush. Now, a lot of stuff happened in the last one, so let's see how things turn out with them. Chapter 17. This is the U.S. Coast Guard. Petty Officer Riley speaking. Yes, I'd like to report a boat dumping sewage in the water. What's the name of this vessel? It's called the Coral Queen. The gambling boat at the Muleman Arena? That's right. Did you witness this violation personally? Petty Officer Riley asked. Look for a bright purple trail leading to Thunder Beach, but you better hurry. Who am I speaking with? Underwood. Payne Underwood. My second phone call was to the Island Examiner newspaper. This time I used my own name, not Dad's. Miles Olmat remembered me, of course. It's good to hear from you, Noah, but I'm sort of busy now. A bait truck just flipped over in Key Largo and there's live shrimp all over the highway. Want a real story? A front page story? Miles Olmat said, sure, you bet. He was humoring me, playing along. I could picture the bored look on his pale, splotchy face. All that stuff my dad said about Dusty Muleman? It's true. Every word. Miles Olmat said, I know how you must feel, Noah. If he were my father, I'd stick up for him too. You want proof? Get over to Dusty Muleman's marina right away. Why? What's going on? Suddenly he was interested. Ask the Coast Guard, I said, and then hung up. Dad, Mom, and Abby were in the living room gathered around Grandpa Bobby. When I came out of the kitchen, he motioned for me to sit down beside him. For the first time, I noticed his resemblance to my father. Dad was taller and heavier, but he had the same square chin and light green eyes. Grandpa Bobby took out a small photograph, worn and creased from being unfolded and folded many times. In the picture, his curly hair was blonde, not silvery, and there was no scar on his cheek. He was lifting some half-naked little kid high above his head. The kid was laughing and kicking his chubby white legs. That kid was me. You were only 2 years old, my grandfather said. It was the first photograph of him I'd ever seen. My parents lost all the family albums when a tropical storm flooded our house the night before my 3rd birthday. Grandpa Bobby passed the snapshot around. Then he carefully refolded it into a square and slipped it in his pocket. Turning back to me, he said, You want to go first, champ? No thanks, you go. He took a slow sip from a coffee mug. Lord, where do I start? I guess by saying how bad I feel for keeping out of touch for the last 10 years or so. Out of touch? Everybody thought you were dead, Abby exclaimed. I'm sorry, I truly am, Grandpa Bobby said. Wait. Now we finally know that Noah is around 12. Payne, Donna, believe me when I say I had good reasons for staying out of your life. I could tell that Mom and Dad were glad to have Grandpa Bobby back, but they were also kind of dazed and quiet. My sister wasn't dazed at all, since she'd never even met him. He had disappeared before she was born. It's not a happy story, he began. One day a man came along, said he needed a captain to take a couple of trips down to South America. The money was right, and I didn't ask many questions. It wasn't like I didn't know what to ask, I just chose not to. Anyways, the first run went fine. No problems with the second one either. But the third time, oh man, were you smuggling drugs? I asked. Even Abby seemed shocked to hear me say that. No, champ, I got no fondness for dopers. It was stones, Grandpa Bobby said. Little green stones called emeralds. But smuggling is smuggling and stupid is stupid. And that's what I was. World-class stupid. Because the guy I trusted turned out to be greedy, backstabbing liars. Actually face-stabbing liars. He pointed ruefully at the M-shaped scar. Anyways, the details don't hardly matter. There was some serious ugliness, and yours truly had to go underground. Up close, he didn't really look like a pirate, at least not the kind of pirate you see in the movies. His teeth were too straight and his manners were too good. But he also didn't look like the kind of grandpa you usually see in the movies. His belly was still flat and his muscles were hard and he was brimming with some strange, wild energy. You could tell he'd never spent a minute of his life dozing in a rocking chair. Dad asked, What happened to the Amanda Rose? That was Grandpa Bobby's fishing boat, which he named after his wife, my grandmother. I never got to meet her because she passed away when my father was just a kid, around Abby's age. Some sort of rare cancer, Mom told us. It was one of the only things my dad would never talk about. Not ever. Payne, they stole the Amanda Rose, my grandfather said sadly. The same night they tried to kill me. Ever since then, I've spent every bleeping minute trying to track down those rat bastards, pardon my language, and get back that boat. Mom spoke up. We kept getting different stories from the State Department. Somebody said your appendix ruptured. Somebody else said it was a bar fight. Grandpa Bobby slapped his gut. As far as I know, my appendix is fine and dandy. As for bar fights, well, who's counting? Then why did they tell us that you were dead when you weren't? I asked. Because there was a dead American, Noah. They found him near a little village outside Barranquilla. My wallet happened to be in the man's pocket, so the Colombian cops figured that he was me, Grandpa Bobby explained. That's the body your daddy's been writing letters to Washington about. The coffin never got dug up and shipped back to the States because I paid off a police captain to make sure that it wouldn't. He grinned slyly. See, I didn't want to miss my own funeral. Abby folded her arms. Hold on. How did some dead guy end up with your wallet? He stole it from me, which was a large mistake. Grandpa Bobby took another sip of coffee. It tore me up on the inside, knowing y'all thought I was planted in some pauper's grave in the middle of nowhere. But I couldn't come back to Florida and bring the kind of trouble that was attached to me. You folks had a solid, decent life going here. Young Noah getting started, Abby on the way. You could have called, my sister said sharply. They've got telephones in South America, don't they? Or sent a letter at least, I cut in, just to let Dad know that you're alive. Grandpa Bobby sat back and smiled. Kids, let me tell you something about your daddy. He's a good man, but sometimes his brain takes a nap and his heart takes the tiller. My father shifted uncomfortably. Oh, come on, Pop. But Grandpa Bobby was on a roll. He addressed Abby and me directly. When your father was a boy, you know what his nickname was at school? Pain in the Butt Underwood. Abby and I busted out laughing. See, he had a bad habit of doing the first thing that popped into his mind, no matter how foolish, my grandfather said. Now, what do you think he would have done if he found out I was still alive and scambling to stay that way down in the jungles of Colombia? He would have hopped on a plane or a boat or a donkey, whatever, and gone looking for me. Am I right, son? And likely gotten himself killed in the bargain. Dad stared down at his shoes. My mother asked, so what made you come back, Pop? This is first-rate coffee. Can I pour myself another cup? While Grandpa Bobby was in the kitchen, Abby nudged my father and whispered, they really called you Pain in the Butt. You're so busted. Keep it up, Dad said with a tight smile. I'll deal with you and your brother later. Grandpa Bobby returned with a full mug and a jelly donut. He took 2 bites of the donut and said, here's what happened. I'm sitting in a bar in this little harbor town waiting to meet up with some dock rat who claims he saw the Amanda Rose over the Grenadines. Anyways, they love satellite TV down there, and it so happens that this particular cantina picks up one of the Miami stations loud and clear. Channel 10? I asked. That's right, Noah. So there I am, drinking a beer, minding my own business, when all of a sudden I look up and who do I see on the tube? Mr. Payne Lee Underwood, my own son, your own daddy. Grandpa Bobby paused and shook his woolly head. He's wearing the latest jailhouse fashions, a nifty puke orange jumpsuit, if I recall, and he's running off at the mouth about how he sunk some jerk's boat, all because the man was dumping toilet poo into the water. My jaw dropped so far it damn near broke my kneecaps. There was my boy in jail. This is implying that he would have come to America if he had heard about the dog napping or the gill net things that also happened in the past. Which is kind of weird. Dad looked up. Tell him what you did next, Pop. You mean hitching a ride to Key West on that billionaire's yacht? He didn't hitch, my father said to me and Abby. He stowed away. Grandpa Bobby had already given Dad the full story while they were out on the towboat searching for the dinghy. Where'd you hide? Abby asked. My grandfather beamed. The wine locker, darling. Perfect, Mom said with a sigh. I didn't touch a drop, Donna, I swear, Grandpa Bobby insisted. Anyways, they knew the customs boys would sweep the yacht clean once we were docked in Key West. Are the Florida Keys supposed to have like a really tight immigration policy? Because if it's anything like Miami, I seriously doubt that. So as soon as we cleared the harbor, I went overboard. Swam to the Mallory docks and thumbed a ride north with a red-headed insurance adjuster who tried her best to save my heathen soul. She dropped me off at Tavernier, where I made camp near the Snake Creek Bridge. Alright, this sounds like a whole book in itself. There's a lot of information here. Found a bunch of old newspapers there. Caught up on what was happening with Payne's court case. Why'd you start tailing me and Abby? I asked. Just a hunch, my grandfather said. In one of those papers there was a story where they quoted you, Noah, talking about your father. You remember that? Hey, it wasn't my idea. I shot a sour look at Dad. Well, he came off like a bright, sensible young fella. Still, I couldn't help thinking that if you were just a little too much like your daddy or granddaddy, you wouldn't sit still and let this muleman creep get away with trashing our family name, not to mention the Atlantic Ocean. Grandpa Bobby winked, then inhaled the rest of his donut. So I decided to keep an eye on you and Miss Abby, just in case you tried something crazy. Thank goodness you did, Mom said. My grandfather told us he'd been laying low during the day, fishing with a hand line under the bridge. After sunset, he'd hide out in the marina, waiting for us to make a move. Hiding where? I asked. Last night it was the tuner tower of a big Bertram, he said. Abby was delighted. I hid there too. I even got video. It's a long ways up, Grandpa Bobby said, but a short trip down. That bald ape never knew what hit him. His name's Luno, I said. I don't care if his name is Mildred. I won't be sending him a get well card. Grandpa Bobby paused to finish his coffee. Dad picked up the story. Mom and I got home from the movies around 12:30. When we saw that your beds were empty, we knew right away where you'd gone. She wanted to call the sheriff, but I said no way, I've had enough of their hospitality. So we hopped in the pickup, peeled out of the driveway, and there he was, larger than life, in the middle of the road, Mom said. No shirt, no shoes, dripping with sweat, flailing his arms and running straight at us, Dad said. My old man. What did you do? I asked. I turned very calmly to your mother and said, either that's a ghost or the government's given us some bad information. Grandpa Bobby said he planned to keep his visit a secret until he saw me and Abby escape in the blue dinghy. The engine on that thing sounded like a bucket of nails in a blender. Wait, a bucket with nails in it in a blender, or a bucket full amount of nails in a blender? I knew you kids wouldn't get very far, he said, so I ran and fetched your folks. Wait a minute, you would have gone all the way back to South America without even saying hello? Without even letting us know that you were alive? That's horrible. My grandfather sat forward and took one of her hands. Now listen here, Tiger. All those years, there wasn't a day went by that I didn't want to pick up a phone and call your daddy. I missed him more than I could ever put into words. But it would have been wrong to drag him in the middle of my situation, which was deadly serious. So my plan was to sneak into the Keys on the sly and see what I might do behind the scenes. I brought along some cash for bail, lawyers, bribes, whatever. There was plenty more in a lockbox up in Hollandale, though I hear that your Aunt Sandy and Uncle Del already helped themselves. Dad said, we don't need any money. Grandpa Bobby raised one silvery eyebrow. Really? Since when did you win the lottery? We'll be fine, Mom said warmly, but thank you, Pop. He smiled. I understand. Well, I don't, my sister grumbled. She snatched her hand away from my grandfather. You know what I think? I think that you're a big Abby, knock it off, I said. He saved our lives. Not quite, said Grandpa Bobby. Some private plane spotted your dinghy and called in the location. Your daddy had his VHF radio dialed to the Coast Guard's channel. Turns out we were only about 3 miles away, so we beat the coasties no sweat. Your daddy's the one who knew where to search. I just went along for the ride is all. No, I'm not talking about the rescue, I said. I'm talking about what happened on the docks, about Luno and the gun. My mother went stiff. What gun? That guy was going to waste us, Abby burst out. I mean, we were history. Then Noah dived on top of me, and then she nodded towards Grandpa Bobby. He jumped the goon and took the pistol away. Immediately, I was sorry that I brought it up. My mom's face had gone white. He tried to kill you? She looked at Grandpa Bobby. Is that true? He tried to kill the children? Donna, it was a flare gun. He probably wanted to scare the you-know-what out of him, my grandfather said. Just a flare gun? Abby sounded disappointed. It's still bad, Dad said angrily. He could have set the dinghy on fire, or your clothes. Grandpa Bobby told all of us to calm down. The main thing is, nobody got hurt except for Baldy. Now I believe it's Noah's turn to tell us his story. You ready, champ? I guess. My sister pretended to hold her nose. Don't leave out the part about the seagull, she said. I didn't leave out anything, even the stuff that made me look the opposite of brilliant. Nobody interrupted with questions. They just sat there and listened. When I was finished, Dad clicked his teeth and said, You crashed into a manatee? Then Mom said, Who's this Shelley person? Then Abby said, The mermaid's bathroom? You perv! Then Grandpa Bobby stood up and took the chain from around his neck. He placed it in my hand and said, You earned it, Noah. The gold coin on the end of that chain was heavier than any coin I have ever held. I couldn't believe he was giving it to me. Once belonged to the Queen of Spain, he said, about 400 years ago. Where did you get it? Dad asked. Won it in a dice game. Or maybe it was poker. Grandpa Bobby shrugged as if he honestly couldn't remember. Come on, troops, let's go for a ride. Where to? I asked. Thunder Beach, he said. Where else? That was a lot of exposition, let me tell you. Chapter 18. The food coloring didn't show up as brightly in the sea as it did in the store bottles, but you could definitely see it. As Abby and I had hoped, the current and wind were in our favor, transporting the dye down the shoreline in a shiny stream from Dusty Moomin's basin. Dad and Grandpa Bobby stood together on the beach, admiring the telltale trail of fuchsia. I'm impressed, my father said. This was your idea, Noah? Abby's too, I said. All I did was pick out the color, she said. That's not true. We were 50-50 partners the whole way. My grandfather slapped a hand on Dad's shoulder. Payne, you and Donna really lucked out with these youngsters. They're true champs, both of them. Most of the time, Dad said, shooting us a sideways glance. You got to admit, said Grandpa Bobby, this is a whole lot neater than sinking the man's boat. Yeah, Pops, thanks for bringing that up. Mom kept staring at the purplish slick in the shallows. Even though she was wearing sunglasses, I could tell that she was upset. At first I thought she was mad at Abby and me, but it turns out that she wasn't. She was mad at Dusty Muleman. Unbelievable! She exploded finally. How could a person do something like that? A father, for heaven's sake! All the kids on the island go swimming here, and he's poisoning the place with all this... Caca? Said Abby. Whatever, my mother fumed. The man ought to be in jail. He is a menace to the public health. Dad has a long list of people that he says should be locked up for one thing or another, but this is the first time I had ever heard Mom say that about anybody. My grandfather was also angered by what he saw, although he tried to not show it. Jail's too good for the lowlife who did this, he said evenly, but it's a start. Abby and I looked uneasily at each other. We'd seen Grandpa Bobby in action before. Payne, you remember that big mutton fish I caught here? He asked my father. The 15-pounder? You bet I remember. Only it was 14 pounds. Dad said. 14 even. Sure? Anyways, it was a hell of a catch, said Grandpa Bobby. That was back before they dropped fish traps all over the reefs. Back before certain creeps started dumping their crapola into the sea. There was a rumbly edge to his voice, like he was struggling to keep his temper under control. Ma said, don't worry, Pop. Someday Dusty Muleman will get exactly what he deserves. People like him always do. This was her famous what goes around comes around theory. My grandfather obviously didn't buy it, although he was too polite to say so. He picked up a branch of driftwood and swept it back and forth through the stained water. Somebody probably ought to notify the Coast Guard while the tide's right, he said. I didn't mention the phone call I made earlier at the house. As if on cue, a sound like a rolling drum beat rose from the north. Abby said, listen, guys, you hear that? Thwaka, 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 thwaka. We all turned and looked up. Over there, said Dad. He has eyes like an osprey. The rest of us couldn't see a thing. After a while, my grandfather spotted it too and pointed to where to look. At first, it was just a small, fuzzy dot in the wide, open blueness of the sky. But as the dot grew larger, it turned blaze orange and took on the shape of a helicopter. The drumbeat of the rotors became a loud, high-pitched whine as the chopper circled lower. On its belly, we could plainly read the words, Coast Guard. A side door rolled open, and a man in a dark jumpsuit leaned out. He was wearing a white crash helmet and aiming a camera down at the water, taking a video of the amazing Fuchsia River. We waved at the Coast Guard man, but he was too busy to wave back. The helicopter gradually began to move, following the colorful current of evidence all the way up to Thunder Beach, all the way to the marina where the Coral Queen was moored. There the chopper hovered for a long time. Dusty Muleman was officially busted. Abby whooped, Grandpa Bobby clapped, and I pumped a fist in the air. We headed home feeling hopeful and happy, though Dad and Mom weren't quite happy enough to forget about me and Abby sneaking out the night before. By the way, you're both grounded, Mom informed us in the car. I signaled for Abby to stay cool, but she ignored me. Grounded for how long? She asked indignantly. Indefinitely, Dad said, which was better than sending an exact number of days or weeks. From experience, I knew that indefinite could be negotiated favorably if Abby would just quit whining. It's not fair, my sister said. In fact, it really bites. Watch your mouth, young lady, Mom warned. But we just saved Thunder Beach. Don't we get bonus points for that? Grandpa Bobby said, Abby, darling, it won't be so bad. Anyways, it's probably a smart idea for you and your brother to lay low for a while. And he was the family expert on laying low. I waited until we got back to the house before asking my parents to delay the starting date of our grounding. Just until tomorrow, I said. Please? My father eyed me suspiciously. Why? You got big plans for this afternoon? I need to go thank Shelley. Me too, said Abby, scooting to my side. Dad left the decision to Mom, who drilled us with one of those I'm not kidding stares. You've got exactly 1 hour, she said. Not a minute more. We dashed for our bikes, Abby calling over her shoulder, Grandpa Bobby, you better be here when we get back. My mother and father honestly care about each other, but they argue about plenty of stuff. Sometimes it seems silly to me and Abby, but other times it was really heavy. For instance, Mom was 99% serious about divorcing Dad if he didn't come home from jail and get his act together. Is that like John Edwards 99% or like actually 99%? I totally understood why she felt like that, and at the same time, I could see the point he was trying to make by sinking the Coral Queen. But even when my parents are fighting, they don't actually fight. It's only sharp words back and forth, no fists or blunt objects. Unfortunately, some people really get carried away, as my sister and I were reminded when we showed up at Shelley's trailer. She was sitting on the steps, gazing off into the distance. She wore black jeans, a gray Gap t-shirt, and a blue trucker's hat worn backward. On one hand was a sweaty bottle of beer, and in the other hand was a rake. Some of the tines were snapped off, and others were bent at sharp angles. It wasn't the sort of damage caused by normal, everyday gardening. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Love is a strange deal, I swear," she said. "You want to come in? It's an awful mess, I'll be honest." "We'll help you clean up," Abby offered. "What kind of mess?" I asked. "Nothing like you ever saw before," Shelley said. "Think you can handle it?" After seeing the condition of the rake, I wasn't so sure. To stall, I asked her what had happened on the Coral Queen after I jumped overboard. She laughed. Nobody heard a thing because the band was so loud. Everybody kept gambling and drinking. The customers who saw you run past figured that you belonged to one of the crew. "What about that nasty old lady who tried to break into the bathroom?" "Oh, her? Free stack of chips, and she was back at the blackjack table, happy as a clam," Shelley reported. "Speaking of bathrooms, I had to make like 7 trips before I got rid of all that purple goo. Every time I get settled nice and cozy, somebody started banging on the door saying they couldn't wait. My wrist hurts from flushing so much." "But our plan worked," Abby piped eagerly. "Did you hear the helicopter fly over? That was the Coast Guard. We saw him taking a video of the stain in the water." "No kidding." Shelley looked pleased. She stood up, spinning the rake like a cheerleader's baton. "Did Dusty say anything after the casino closed?" I asked. "Nah, he was a total basket case," Shelley said. "There was some big fight on the docks, and Luno got his butt seriously whipped, is what I heard. One of the bouncers drove him to the hospital, and then the cops showed up, asking what had happened, but by then Dusty had already split. The crew didn't know any different, so they waited until all the people were gone and pumped the holding tank straight into the basin, same as usual. I told Shelley she'd done a great job. Thanks for emptying the liquor crate so I had a place to hide, and for sneaking me into the lady's head, and most of all, for risking your neck to help us out. Yeah, you did awesome," said Abby. "But what about Dusty's secret spy at the Coast Guard station? How do you fix it so that he wasn't around this morning when Noah called in about the Coral Queen?" Shelley propped to the rake on her shoulder, like a rifle. "Come on in," she said to us. "But like I said, it's not a pretty picture." She wasn't kidding. Inside the trailer, it looked like a small bomb had exploded. Broken lamps, overturned furniture, dents and holes in the fake wood paneling. 2 rumpled men lay face down. One on the gross shag carpet, another one on the gross moldy sofa. We couldn't see their faces, so it was hard to tell if they were dead or not. The one on the floor was sopping wet and striped with green slime from the aquarium, which lay on its side, empty and cracked. Shelley used the rake handle to poke at the unconscious man on the sofa. "You asked about Mr. Billy Babcock? Well, here he is." Billy Babcock made a low snuffling sound, but he didn't move. "What did you do to him?" Abby asked. "Nothing you didn't want done," Shelley replied with a snort. "He spent about 2 hours yakking at my bar last night. I figured the only way to guarantee that he wouldn't be at work this morning was to bring him home with me, and we get the idea," I cut in, not wanting Abby to hear the R-rated details. "That's cool, Noah, watching out for your little sister," Shelley said, "but don't worry, I was a perfect lady. I invited Billy over for one of my high-octane cocktails, maybe 2. All we did was hold hands on the couch until he got tired of telling me how gorgeous and wonderful I was. Then he keeled over and went nighty-night. So who's the other guy?" I pointed at the soggy heap on the floor. "You don't recognize him?" Shelley chuckled again. Using the business end of the rake, she snagged the man's ooze-covered shirt and rolled him onto his back. When I saw that pasty, sunken face, I was completely blown away. "Well, who is it?" my sister asked impatiently. "That's Lice Peking," I said, "in person." Shelley unhooked the rake from his shirt. "I told you, love's a strange deal." "Is he alive?" Abby asked. "More or less," Shelley replied. "You guys want a Coke?" We sat at the dinette and listened to her story, and it was a good one. After my father had gone to jail and started spouting off about the Coral Queen, Dusty Muleman had gotten nervous. He made a list of everybody besides Dad who knew the truth about the pollution scam, and then he sent Luno to warn each person to keep quiet or else. The goon hadn't murdered Lice Peking, as Shelley had thought, but he had scared the bodily fluids out of him. When Luno had showed up at the trailer, Lice naturally assumed that Dusty had found out about a secret deal with Dad, the bonefish skiff, in exchange for Lice's testimony. So as soon as Luno left, Lice sweeped Shelley's Jeep and drove full speed for the mainland. True to form, he forgot to fill the gas tank. When it was empty, he simply parked the truck and took off on foot. "But what about the bloodstains on the seat?" I asked. Shelley shook her head sheepishly. "Ketchup," he said. "That slob was pigging out on Big Macs and fries for 40 miles. Abby said, "Why'd he come back? Did he run out of money or something?" "You're a very sharp young lady. Yeah, he ran out of money," Shelley said, "but that's not why he came back to the Keys. See, he missed me. Deep down in his heart, he truly did." I cringed when my sister asked, "How can you possibly believe that?" Because the man knew for a fact what would happen if I ever laid eyes on him again. He knew I'd whoop him like the sorry, no-good jackass he is. Yet he came back anyway. "If that ain't true love, it's close enough for me," said Shelley. The timing of Lice Peaking's return couldn't have been worse. It was past 3 in the morning when he flung open the trailer door, only to find his cherished Shelley reading an astrology magazine on the couch with a snoozing Billy Babcock stretched out beside her. In a jealous fit, Lice Peaking had jumped on Billy, kicking and punching and scratching. That was when Shelley had to run to the tool shed. Being hit with a rake seemed to work miracles on Lice Peaking's attitude. He dropped to one knee, told Shelley he adored her, and blubbered he was sorry for all the rotten deeds he's ever done. He even promised to pay back the $186 he took, plus the towing charges for the Jeep. Shelley said, "I'll never see a nickel for sure, but it's still a nice sentiment." I told Lice to quit begging and get off the floor, and that's when the fool grabbed the aquarium to pull himself up. The whole tank flipped over on top of him, all 50 gallons, and off to dreamland he went. It wouldn't have been a huge shock to learn that Shelley had purposely dumped the grungy aquarium on Lice Peaking, but I took her word that it was an accident. Anything was possible. "What about the fish?" Abby asked worriedly. There was only one left, the loneliest, most pitiful guppy you ever saw. "I put him in the bathtub," Shelley said. "And him?" I nodded toward Billy Babcock. "Slept through all the fun, believe it or not." Shelley nudged him again with the rake handle. "Once he wakes up, I'll clue him in on what happened. Otherwise, he'll be curious about all those fresh bruises and fingernail marks." I went over to take a close look at Lice Peaking. The toppling aquarium had left a plum-sized knot on his forehead. His t-shirt showed several rows of small bloody holes where Shelley's rake had dug in, but he seemed to be feeling no pain. He snored peacefully, blowing snot bubbles from his nose. Abby said to Shelley, "What a loser. I can't believe you're taking him back." "That's none of your business, princess, but let's say it was. Let's say you were my mother and you were upset about me hanging out with this lame excuse for a boyfriend. I'd tell you that I'm a big girl with my eyes wide open. Made a few dumb mistakes on my own, but I was always grateful for a second chance. And trust me," Shelley said, "that's all Lice Peaking is getting. One more chance. Look here, he even went and bought me some new earrings." Shelley pulled back her thick hair to reveal 5 small shiny hoops in her left ear. Abby admitted that they looked cool. "Yeah, they do." Shelley turned to me. "Noah, what does your daddy think is going to happen to Dusty Muleman? He says the Coast Guard will probably shut down the Coral Queen right away. He says they won't throw Dusty in jail, but they can make him pay a fortune in fines. But if the boat's out of business, then you're out of a job," Abby said to Shelley. "What are you going to do?" "Don't worry about me, princess. Being a bartender in the Keys is like being a roofer in hurricane season. You're never out of work for long." I'm pretty sure that that's kind of the case for being a bartender anywhere, but whatever. The trailer was such a disaster that sweeping and mopping seemed like a waste of energy. It should have been towed straight to the county dump. But it was Shelley's only home, so I said, "We're going to help you fix up this place." "You'll do no such thing." She steered us towards the door. "I got all the help I need if these two turkeys ever wake up." She gave each of us a quick hug and closed the door. Abby checked her watch and announced that we had exactly 11 minutes to get home or we'd be grounded for the next century. We took off as fast as we could down the old road. Ahead, I spotted 2 familiar figures, one running and the other pedaling a beach cruiser beside him. Abby noticed them too. "Noah, don't stop," she said through clenched teeth, "no matter what." And I wouldn't have stopped either if only Jasper Jr. hadn't called me an exceptionally insulting name as we flew past. Next thing I knew, I felt myself hit the brakes. It was pure reflex. After all that had happened, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to brighten Jasper Jr.'s day. "Are you completely whacked?" Abby whispered. "Keep going," I told her firmly. "I'm not kidding." She knew it too. She kept riding. I spun the bike around and waited. Jasper Jr. was on the beach cruiser, and Bull was jogging to keep up, beat-faced and sweating buckets. Where are you guys going?" I asked pleasantly. "To the marina, maybe? To have a chat with the Coast Guard?" Jasper Jr. hopped off the bike and let it fall. I could see that he was boiling mad. He stalked up to me and grabbed my handlebars and wrenched them back and forth, trying to knock me off. Well, at least at this time, he has a reason to be mad at Noah. I can't believe I didn't realize this the first time. But at the beginning of the book, he was mad at Noah because of something that Noah's dad did to Jasper's dad. At least at this time, Noah's actions directly affected him. Somehow I kept my balance, and I also kept the smile on my face. It was driving him nuts. Okay, dork brain, let's do it, Jasper Jr. snarled. You and me, right now. Jasper, don't start nothing, Bull said, bending over to catch his breath. Very calmly, I climbed off my bicycle and put down the kickstand. Then I stepped up to Jasper Jr. and got right in his face. When he reached up to shove me, I knocked his arms away. He seemed totally amazed. I couldn't stop smiling. Being afraid of these two boneheads seemed so ridiculous, I'd rather have taken another punch in the eye than run away. Come on, dude, Bull said to Jasper Jr. Let's go. Oh, no you don't. Not yet, I said. He still owes me an apology. In fact, he owes me two after what he just called me. You're so dead, Jasper Jr. snapped. So dead. The way he was moving his rat-like mouth, I knew he was working up another loogie to spit on me. I reached under my shirt and pulled out the chain that was hanging from my neck. The ancient gold coin dangled back and forth, glinting in the sunlight. From the bug-eyed way that Jasper Jr. and Bull were staring, I knew that they recognized the coin as the one that Grandpa Bobby was wearing that day in the woods. Bull took a shaky half-step backwards. Jasper Jr. stood there gnawing on his lower lip, which I took as a sign of possible brain activity. Neither of them wanted to tangle with that crazy old pirate again. I'm still waiting for my apologies, I said. Bull poked Jasper Jr. Get it over with, dude. Then Bull picked up the beach cruiser, hopped on, and pedaled off. Jasper Jr. shifted uneasily as he watched his friend ride off. Now it was just me and him. I'd like to think he would have been nervous even if I hadn't shown him the coin, but that's probably not true. He turned his knobby walnut head and hawked on the pavement. I'm sorry, Underwood, he mumbled, barely loud enough for me to hear. One down, I said, and one more to go. It was obviously painful, but Jasper Jr. forced himself to say it again. I'm sorry, okay? S-O-R-Y. Close enough. I stepped back and waved him down the road. Jasper Jr. gave me one of his trademark sneers and took off running. Have a nice day, I called, though I knew that it probably wouldn't turn out to be that way for the Muleman family. All right, things seem to have turned out great. So how are there 3 more chapters left in this book? We'll figure out next time.